A first-of-its-kind survey by civil aviation authorities to take stock of the sector's safety culture. It shows many seem to be taking the issue seriously. Close to 4,000 workers from 400 aviation firms took part in that survey. Their roles include aerodome operators, ground handlers and freight forwarders. 8 in 10 agree with statements that they are keenly aware of safety risks to themselves, as well as risks they may be causing to others. 7 in 10 agree that they are driven to seek improvement in safety, while 6 in 10 also trust that safety is the motivation of their actions and operate on a mutual understanding of acceptable behaviours. Now, for more analysis, we are joined by Matt Driskill. He's editor of Asian Aviation. Good evening to you, Matt. Your assessment, first off, of the findings, what stood out to you?
Well, I think the findings are, number one, very good overall. I fly a lot. I just flew to Europe a couple of months ago. I took my son on a trip to the U.S. About a month ago, which was a really long flight, actually 4 or 5 different flights. Safety is the number one thing for the aviation industry. Nobody's going to get on a plane if you're worried about crashing. And it's actually, as anybody will tell you that's in the industry, whether you're in the aviation industry or whether you're in the car industry, you're safer on an airplane than you are if you're driving. I live in Cambodia, I live in Phnom Penh, and especially if you're driving here, you're a lot safer on an airplane. So the findings are really not surprising. I mean, people in the industry, they care about it. And I was looking at the numbers. I think the ICAO audit for Singapore was 99.7%, which was one of the highest numbers around. So that's good for Singapore. I lived in Singapore for 11 years. I've flown Singapore Airlines many, many times. I love Changi Airport. So it's really not surprising that people are taking safety so seriously.
Right, Matt, yeah, you mentioned Singapore's safety track record over there, and you mentioned it wasn't surprising. But what developments would have precipitated a first-of-its-kind survey like this, given the aviation industry and sector has been around for a long time?
Well, I think a lot of it, and I hate to bring up COVID again, but the pandemic, so many people were laid off during the pandemic, so many people retired, because of the layoffs or the retrenchments, whatever you want to call it, you lost a lot of institutional knowledge. So you had all these people that had worked as ground handlers, as baggage handlers, pilots, flight attendants, everybody like that. And you lost a lot of that institutional knowledge. And with that goes, safety becomes sort of second nature to a lot of people. And you have to train people, you have to get new people in there. And so that's part of the problem. Pilots have to go back into the simulators. The air traffic control people have to be retrained or upgrade their skills. And it's the same with the ground staff, too. I think in the U.S. the other day, not the other day, but a few months ago, there was a ground staff member that was actually sucked into or ingested into a jet engine because they got too close to the engine. And so it's those kinds of problems that the industry is trying to focus on right now, is sort of retraining and training the new people that they've had to bring on board because other people retired or they found new jobs during the pandemic.
Matt, let's take a look at what this framework actually wants to cover, because it's looking at giving safety cultural dimensions and 4 socio-cultural factors as well. What are some of the pain points in aviation safety culture here in Singapore? And do you think that this framework maybe adequately covers those points?
I think it does. I mean, I read over the speech and the release, the press release that was sent out today from CAAS, And I think it does. Singapore, it is a cultural thing. And I lived in Singapore for 11 years, and some people can say, well, it's a top-down management style. But you find that around Asia in a lot of places. And I think what this study shows is that people from the bottom up need to be able to speak up. And if they see something wrong, if they see something that is not safe happening, they need to speak up. And they don't need to be afraid of the boss at the top. They need to say, hey, stop. This is not safe for our passengers. This is not safe for our crew, and things like that. So I think it's a good thing. And I think it is a cultural thing. Sometimes, again, I'm American, but I've lived in Asia since 1989. And sometimes there's a cultural problem with people that are not the boss speaking up. They sometimes are afraid to contradict the boss. And I think this is a good study, or the study shows that it's a good thing that everybody needs to be involved in safety, because, again, if you don't feel safe getting on an airplane, the airline's going to go out of business.
Matt, always good to talk to you. Matt Driskill, the editor of Asian Aviation. Thank you.